Hello and welcome to Cold Outreach Success Stories, where we interview regular business people just like you who've had good success with cold outreach on email and other channels. We go deep into the process with hot tips around messaging, targeting, personalization, so you can take away real tips that you can implement in your cold outreach starting tomorrow. Today we have Ayhan from Growth Rhino. Hey Ayhan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and Growth Rhino. What do you guys do? How do you make money?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Ayhan. I'm the founder of Growth Rhino. We're an outbound agency. We typically focus on B2B SaaS companies, at the seed up to Series A level. Sometimes we also work with bootstrap companies or agencies that service technology-oriented companies. Our bread and butter is around cold email. We've been doing cold emailing as an agency for about I would say 3 years or 2.5 years. Worked with about 50 plus companies over the past 3 years or so. Prior to that, I did some consulting on various outbound projects. And then prior to that, I was a BDR and sales rep. So I did that for about 2.5 years. So I've been in the outbound space now for if you add that too, for about 6, 7 years now.
Oh, so you did BDR work for companies. I imagine a SaaS company, and then you thought, okay, I can just jump into this thing and do it for other clients.
Yeah, kind of. So when I was a BDR, like my mandate was to make as many dials as possible. So it was like this is 2017 or so. And I was doing it for an email marketing company, and they were like, okay, fine, like just go out and like just do aggressive outbound. And I was like, well, okay, well, what does outbound mean? What's the most efficient way of doing it? And I came across at that time it was called Zen Prospect, and now it's called Apollo.
Yeah.
And it was like, you can go and like just send a bunch of emails to people. And I got a lot of my success of booking a small amount of meetings that I could, because I was still learning a lot from doing that rather than doing brute force outbound calling, trying to call people from like and trying to match up time zones and really try to communicate the value propositions. It just was really, really tough in that specific space because it was like super saturated. Like email marketing, you can think
Mhm.
like MailChimp, Klaviyo,
Yeah.
Shopify has their own thing. So like imagine trying to do outbound for that and you're trying to connect maybe with like a CMO or a head of email or a head of loyalty marketing, and it's like really really tough. And then again, you're aligning on so many different initiatives. And also, sorry, that persona particularly is not very receptive to outbound calls. Their preference is to receive stuff on email. So I would do things like I would just do a lot of outbound cold email, some manual, some automated. Sales engagement just became a thing. BDR just became a thing. So I would do custom videos. And yeah, I got exposed to that space pretty early on, which I'm very grateful for because it really opened up my eyes. I think I joined outbound at the right time because a lot of people were legacy people
Mhm.
because my boss at that time was like, just make 500 dials a week and you'll be fine. And I did 500 dials and I didn't book any meetings. I was like, because the data was bad, my
Yeah.
opening could have been better. The time zones was an issue. So like, there's just different things like that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And it's sad that even today, like a lot of those folks, they just keep hitting the phone folks. They still are in SaaS leadership roles and then just doing things suboptimally to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a time and place that I'm not against the phones. I think one of the biggest successes I've had when I was a sales rep is when I would combine the two channels,
Mhm.
especially if you're in a SaaS company. Like if you have a trial sign up, instead of like emailing them an onboarding thing, like if you sign up for like Pipedrive or any other CRM now, you'll get an email from a sales rep. Hey, let's book a time. Like
Yeah.
just call the person and say like, hey, I'm your Pipedrive rep. Like let me know like why'd you sign up for Pipedrive, right? Um, I'm not against the phone. I think the phone has a certain time and place. And I think the leadership who push the phone, it's like they're coming from more traditional, well oiled machines. So and I've talked about this previously in other places where it's like it's very different when you're an early stage company versus you're a more mature company with, and it also depends on how well defined your sales processes are. If your sales processes are very well defined and phone is massaged into it, then yeah, sure.
Mhm.
If not, then it becomes very, very challenging.
Mhm. That makes a ton of sense. Okay, so now let's dive deeper into your cold outbound process. So how do you get clients? Is it mostly referrals or do you do cold outbound for yourself as well?
Yeah, obviously. So we do two things. So one is I've invested quite a bit on the inbound front. So it's funny because we first said like, okay, fine, we evaluated all the vendors out there, and we're like, not a lot of cold email agencies have good websites. So we're like, okay, let's go put together a decent website. And we did that. We got like an SEO agency to kind of just have SEO optimize it. And so we get a few leads a month from there. Like they're not the greatest because you can imagine it's like people who want to do like self-service or whatever. But I think it was important for us to kind of go a little bit more upmarket. We had to position ourselves accordingly. So we do get some inbound leads per week, per month or so.
Mhm.
And then yeah, we run our own outbound campaigns as well. So that's how we get our leads, and then we get them, we work them, try to close them within 30 to 45 days, and then go from there.
Okay, sounds good. So let's dive deeper into your outbound process then. Like, how do you build lists? How do you get the data and all of that?
I guess before that, let's start with the strategy um, because we really try to define the strategy by persona base and try to identify what problems does this particular persona face and why, and really try to do a deep dive in that. And it doesn't matter if it's a client or for us. So like right now, like we've done like B2B SaaS companies who don't have like sales leadership, because we think we fit in really well in there, as specifically at the pre-Series A level. It's like, hey, if you're a pre-Series A company, B2B, and you don't have sales leadership, you can probably use our help as a secondary channel. So
Yeah.
we've experimented with like personas like that, right? So we first define the persona, and once that persona is defined, we'll start with the list building process. And our list building process is either, I would say, there's two different methodologies. One is what we call like a qualitative method, and one is called like a scale method.
Mhm.
The qualitative method is, as it sounds, we'll go in and we'll try to find, like I just said, well, let's go and find companies that are pre-Series A, work in maybe two, three industries, and let's identify that they don't have revenue leadership on their team. Okay, we've identified this team, so these companies or these set of accounts, let's go find the founder,
Mhm.
email addresses, and then pull them out, right?
Mhm.
On the scale front, what we do is we'll take like a pure list grab, like go into Apollo or Visa or like Sales Nav and just do a massive pull. It's very raw. We'll get the email addresses and we clean it up with Never Bounce, but that's about it. Like we were not going to additionally qualified because we usually do that if we're doing like something like a webinar outplay. Like, hey, let's just invite every single person we can to these webinars for the clients. Because we're trying to just get attendees into the door, and then like
Mhm.
we're slowly like getting rid of that model. We're deprecating it over the next, I would say, coming months, and we're going to start focus more on qualitative. The scale model also works if you have very very low ACVs
Mhm.
and you just kind of want to get generate awareness. So they're good awareness campaigns because you just need kind of, and they're really good if like you have a binary offer or a binary product.
Mhm.
But we're going more into like the markets of like sophistication and complexity. So
Mhm.
we have to go very, very, very specific with our some of our audiences. Right. In terms of tools, we use, I think I mentioned some of them. So we use Sales Navigator as a search. We use Wizard.co to pull, to enrich emails. From there, we have like 4 or 5 Apollo.io accounts.
Mhm.
We also have a contact out membership. So we're pulling data from like 4 or 5 different places, just because we have to, and we have that requirement. I think we're also using another one called Scrape Hero and Grow Me Organic. So yeah, we have like 5, 6 different vendors.
I see. I see. And the funding data comes from Sales Navigator or somewhere else?
So funding data, I forgot about this. So we also have a membership to Crunchbase. So it's
Naturally.
like, so we pull from there. Apollo and SalesNav also have funding data, but we're only using funding for like startups. The revenue data is on all of them are bad because it's usually private companies. What we do find sometimes really, really helpful is SimilarWeb,
Mhm.
because we'll go to a website and be like, okay, fine. Like if a SimilarWeb picks up like there's like 100,000 site visitors,
Yeah.
like that means something, right? So it's a good indication that the company is thriving, it's done well. It has like maybe 100 employees on LinkedIn. Guesstimate and cross-reference it against other individuals. Like if you say, hey, I know this company is doing, let's say, 10 million, they
Mhm.
have 10,000 hits, 10,000 similar web visitors, they're in a similar industry, you're like, okay, like again, it's not foolproof, but
Mhm.
it's a good, from our perspective, it's a good way to like cross-reference and identify good prospects, right?
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I hadn't thought of that. It's pretty interesting. Okay, cool. So now you have the data. What does your outbound process look like? Is it mostly emails? You also add in calls or LinkedIn?
No, so we just do emails. The team is set up that way. What we tell our clients is that, once a response is generated, we kick it over to you. You or the AE or the whoever should go and add that person on LinkedIn
Yeah.
as an additional touch point. Or what we have is if the person has an AE or a BDR on their side, their BDR will call that person if the number is there, right? So we that's more on the client facing side. We don't do that. We do pure email.
Makes sense. Any thoughts on all of the other newer channels coming up, like physical gifting, all of that? Have you thought through any of those?
I think physical gifting is an interesting channel. I'm sure it works. I've just not been able to figure that out. I think it works pre-COVID days because it was very easy to like just find a company's office and send them something.
Yeah,
It's also used a lot for account-based marketing and account-based sales. And that's typically for mid-market and enterprise type of companies that are prospecting to that. We don't do that, right? Like,
yeah,
sure, we can prospect mid-market and enterprise, but it's not in our current wheelhouse. I think with physical gifting, it's kind of good to elbow your way into the front. But like, if you go back to the basics, if the problem is deep enough or makes sense,
yeah,
it should trigger the response, right? Positive or negative, but it should trigger it, right? Often, what we find is that companies that enter a saturated market, like, let's say you're an accountant, that becomes a lot harder, and I don't think like physical gifting there, like maybe physical gifting will maybe help you get a good impression from someone, but I think you need to be positioned well if you're in a saturated market to kind of win it just from a copywriting or from a messaging perspective.
yeah, yeah. No, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. It's mostly ABM, right? Like from what I've heard, like it's mostly mid-market,
Yeah,
large ACV deals.
yeah,
Yeah,
the gifting. I don't know any of the other channels. Like, again, I think I don't really know how many exist beyond social, phone, and email. To be honest, like I'm trying to think. Like social is Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think that's a good supplementary channel just to make sure you can elbow your way to the front.
yeah,
I think phone is good. I know if you can include voicemails help with
yeah.
your call. Voicemails will always just be helpful with your response rates because somebody will kind of see it, and a lot of people are using voicemails to like get a transcribe. But I really think it's very hard. Like I think email has like really become number one from a prospecting perspective. I'm not discounting the other, but I
Yeah.
think just like everyone has email, it's cheap, it's accessible, and it's very much like everyone has multiple email IDs. So like I think it's kind of superseded the phone, and I would say in most industries, if you're trying to prospect, I would say like traditional industries, then yeah, like you probably need better phone call assistance and stuff like that, right? So I
Mhm.
guess it changes by industry.
Hmm. Makes a ton of sense. Perfect. So let's get to the copy now. Okay, so personalization, relevance, all of that good stuff. How do you think it through?
Yeah, so like I think I have mixed opinion about this, and I'm happy to like dive deeper into it. So we've tried, like, I'm not gonna say any of the products names because just to save them, but we've tried like custom first line intros where they
Hmm.
use AI generated content. We've tried like four or
Yeah,
five of them, where they use like, hey, I saw that you went to University of so and so, and like we tried that. It didn't really move the needle,
yeah.
right? And then the other thing what we did, which actually did it, it made our open rate up to 90%, which was like, hey, first name, saw that you work at company name and you work with client one,
Hmm.
client two, client three. So we would just go to the company's website and just download, like, just literally get a VA to add the three clients into the CSV as custom fields, and then we'd upload that. And
Hmm.
then what happens in the preview text, you have the guy's first name or the person's first name, their company name, and their client name. And they're like, whoa, what's this? And
Wow.
you see the open rate just skyrocket.
Yeah.
But the response rate wasn't good because the transition between that is like, hey, we want to like, this was for customer success software, and
Hmm.
the whole thing was about retention. So we're like, hey, we'd like to help you retain those customers, right? So a lot of the feedback we got from there was, don't email me. And the subject lines we used were like retention, churn, keep this company from staying. So a lot of people were opening those emails and were actually with negative perception because they thought those clients were leaving them.
Yeah.
So we kind of learned from that pretty fast, but it was like, okay, like to answer your question on personalization, I think personalization to a certain extent matters. I
Hmm.
think you have your bare bones basic ones, which is first name, company name, and like job title, and maybe like city name. Those are like your four bare bone ones, and
Hmm.
you should always have them. How you utilize them is really up to you. And I think there's additional items you can kind of do utilize. I generally think like some of it is also fluff, like
Yeah.
because the personalization matters only if it's relevant, right? If it's not relevant, then like every sentence should be relevant in the email, right? Like if it's not, then it shouldn't really be there, right? So I think if the relevancy and you hit and you're very deep on the problem and you talk about a genuine solution, then you should be able to kind of cut through the noise.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's kind of my view on personalization.
No, I actually 100% agree with you. In fact, like even in our product, we were trying out first lines, and the feedback we got from customers is pretty much the same. So we're actually deprecating our first line engine completely and going deep into the list building from Sales Navigator aspect, because that's what's getting most traction, right? Because sometimes I think the issue here is fundamentally about the transition, right? You can have a great first line, but if your transition doesn't feel natural in a cold email, and you don't have too much real estate, right? Like you can't write 1,000 word cold email naturally, right? So unless the personalization is really connected very neatly into the relevance of your offering, then it doesn't really work.
So like one really really good video to highly recommend you or whoever listens to this is like look at Beck Holland's personalization at scale YouTube video.
Mhm.
She's done a great job. Like I follow her quite a bit, and she has a really good framework on what does it mean to take personalization, and she works with a lot of like um, BDR teams and all of that type of stuff. So like her framework is like, hey, you have the first thing you want to hit is like like something is like a personal drawer. Like the
Mhm.
personal drawer is something that they've self-authored on LinkedIn or they've self-authored a blog, and you reach out to them and you mention their blog content or you mention their Medium article or an award that they got, whatever, right? But then she talks about that transition, which is like only a few lines, which is really, really tough. We don't do it because we have to optimize for scale.
Yeah.
But she's working with teams that like with BDRs who and train them to kind of do that, right? Which they try to make that transition fairly seamless, right? Also, another guy to follow is Josh Brown.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn. He does a lot of great content, and like he literally just writes like, "Oh, that's an awkward transition." Like, uh, and he says, anyways, like he tries to keep it super super conversational, right? So I think if I was a BDR trying to do more mid market and enterprise, or trying to do my own prospecting, and there's manual touch points, that's kind of what I would do then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Josh and Beck both are great follows on LinkedIn. I'll link them in the show notes so you guys can go and actually follow them. Awesome. Okay, let's get into your journey a little bit more then. So you started all of this. Like, what was the top mistake, like the biggest mistake that you made when you first started the agency? Could be cold emailing, could be strategy, could be anything.
I think there's a lot of different there's a lot of mistakes that's been made. So there's mistakes on running the agency, which is I don't think you're really interested
More
in.
of the
Uh,
campaigns.
yeah, yeah, and then there's all the then there's stuff on running the campaigns. When you're thinking of like running a lot of cold email and trying to run cold email at scale, it's a very different beast, right? Running cold email at scale is like, hey, I have to manage 25 different email accounts. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what does that mean? I have to make sure that 25 is warmed up. I have to manage throttle limits. I need to manage all of this and stuff. So, like, having some mechanism or some sort of like operations guidance around like how you manage these 25 different email accounts is like pretty important, right? And again, if you're an agency like mine, you're managing different clients, or you're managing like if you're 10 clients, that's 250 email accounts. So
Mhm.
like there's a lot of different you just got to make sure that you don't like you connect the right email accounts, you don't disconnect them, and all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think on the technical side, there's a massive learning curve there because, like, again, when you're doing consulting and when you're doing it yourself, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll go set up 5, 6 email accounts on G Suite. I'll do it myself. Within a couple hours, I'm like, I'm set up SPF, DKIM, DMARC, boom, 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 done, right?
Yeah.
But when you're kind of doing it like 25 at a pop, you're like, okay, wow, Google is like taking my IP now. Now I'm locked out of the accounts. I have to put an OTP and like all of that type of stuff. So I think on the cold email, like just the technical setup, that was
Mhm.
one learning there. I think the other thing was just like really experimentation with all on all these tools in your tech stack, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a lot out there. You just need to find stuff that works for you and that works, and then that kind of fits naturally into your workflow. I think with a lot of other people, they're adopting tools first and then figuring it out. Like
Mhm.
it's like first I kind of map out what your workflow looks like and then find the right tools, I would say. Because sometimes you may not like, we had 3 4 different tools. Like we still do, like, we're cleaning in never bounce, we're scraping in one place, we're sending in another. So that can get kind of like really, really confusing, right? And I think like probably an easy mistake that's avoidable is like when you're downloading lists, especially if it's like a CSV file and there's like a person's name has an accent, which is very common for like Canadian,
Yeah.
sometimes American, sometimes Western European people, or they have an emoji. Like
Hmm.
you just have to go and like clean up those names
Yeah.
on the person names, and then you also have to clean up the company names. I
Yeah.
think Apollo now has like a specific column now for like company name
Hmm.
filters. So it's a company name for email where they remove like INC, they remove the LLC, they remove all of these extra things because it sounds weird. It's like I saw that you work at like Apple Inc., right?
Yeah.
So it's like, so you gotta be careful of that stuff, or they'll like, or you'll have Apple all uppercase.
Yeah.
So I think that was like some initial learnings which are like easily avoidable that can be done, right? Apart from that, there's all like the usual suspects, like where it's like when you first started in cold emailing, not at the agency when I started first started out, I was setting like from one like my main primary Gmail account, or not Gmail, but my main primary work account.
Yeah.
When I was at the email marketing company, I was sending out like 600-700 emails,
My
and then
God.
my email account got blocked, and then I was like, well, like I didn't understand deliverability and all of this type of stuff, right? So it took me some time to like get my head wrapped around that. So and then obviously warm up has recently come up, so just making sure that that process is also taken into account.
It makes a ton of sense. Yeah. Typical mistakes. I've been there, like sending like 200 from one inbox in a day and then suddenly getting blocked.
Yeah, I think it's changed over time. Before it was like it was okay to do 500, 400 a day, right? Like no one cared. Like now it's like you're at 50 a day, and you need to make sure it's well warmed up, it's well timed, it's well spaced out. Like this is we're talking a matter of like 4 years. You've seen so much change happen in the cold email space, which is nuts, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, um,
Awesome. So one final question. What is one or two things that you're excited about trying out to improve your whole campaign process?
yeah, I think there's always new things that are coming out for the cold email space. One thing we've never really figured out, and we're still trying to do it, and I'm seeing new products like SendSpark do it, is like integrating video at scale, like video and like I used video before, but it's really good. Like it's really tough to scale it because of one to one and stuff like that. I've seen another company called Vidu, VIDU, that does like personalized GIFs.
Mhm.
So basically, you have like a green screen whiteboard, and like it'll superimpose that, and like it'll be like, "Hey Saurav, hey Ayhan," like on the GIF. So it's like instead of an image, it's an animated GIF, and like so I think there's like some interesting stuff that's coming out there. It's just like how do you implement it and make sure that the data is clean on it. So those are some of the interesting things that I'm kind of excited to try about. But like yeah, I think that like with cold email, a lot of people kind of get excited by a lot of things, but it's just important to like remember the basics of like trying to be genuine and make sure that you're communicating all the right value prop. Yeah, so those are probably some products that I'm excited about. Don't know what else from what's happening in the industry. I think the industry, like the biggest thing in the industry right now, is this whole like thing with warm up. I don't know if you've been following it. Like they shut down about like Gmail shut down its warm up and like and all that. So I think the warm up space. I remember like 2 years ago, like warm up was nothing, and then all of a sudden it blew up, and everyone wanted to do warm up. And now like nobody wants to do warm up anymore. So it's interesting to see. So I'm following that space. I think, but the cold email industry is generally stable. But you have all these random things that just get thrown at you. Um, yeah, I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I kind of went off tangent.
It does. It does. I've been following the whole warm up saga as well, and I think it's a pretty interesting development. It just happened, and then it reminds me of what they used to do in SEO in like 2013 or 2012. I think it was like they had something called PBNs. Like you had backlinks between bunch of sites, and that would make you rise in the Google rankings really fast. So Google has had to deal with this fair share of gaming around its products. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's not like they're gonna sit quietly and let it happen, right? Like these are important products for Google and Microsoft. So obviously, like it is an evolving space. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see kind of what happens with them. But just another, yeah, I guess it's just another thing that we have to kind of consider.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ehan. That was it. Really, really, really love talking to you, and thanks for sharing all the tips, tricks, and the journey.
Yeah, for sure, anytime.
So that's all the time we have, folks. I really enjoyed the episode. I hope you did too. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, whatever you can to spread the word out about cold outreach success stories so more people can enjoy and learn from the show. All right, that's all, folks. Bye bye.